Here we are. This is episode 6.
Scotch is good. Scotch in my belly. Belly go down, 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 down.
This is Married to the Startup, where marital bliss meets entrepreneurial mayhem. George and Alicia have spent over a decade juggling 5 kids, multiple startups, and a surprising amount of free time. On each episode, they'll dish on the triumphs and meltdowns that come with mixing family and startups, from the boardroom to the bedroom. No topic is off limits. Real and raw. Real and raw. And now your hosts, George, the CEO who traded the corporate grind for sleepless nights and investor tantrums, and Alicia, who swapped a peaceful life for the roller coaster of coaching entitled founders. This is Married to the Startup, where love meets chaos and entrepreneurship reigns supreme.
All right, we are back for episode 6 of Married to the Startup. I am your host, Alicia McKenzie.
And I'm the co-host, George McKenzie.
Are you the co-host?
I don't know. I'm a participant.
You're a participant.
I'm a participant.
I kind of do everything. You just show up.
I do. I bring the thunder.
All right, so today we are going to talk a little bit about entrepreneur pitfalls and some regrets and getting a business going.
And how our relationship is much like a business.
But also, if you are forming a new company, what's the best way to do that? But first things first, Mr. McKenzie.
What's that?
When you start a company, do you always have the end game in mind?
Yeah. I think when anyone starts a company, I think it's beneficial to understand what the goal of the company is. Is the goal for the company to run in perpetuity? Is it a lifestyle business? Is it a business in which you're going to need outside capital to grow it? Or is it ultimately something that you're going to build, grow, and exit? So all of those have ramifications on, how you form the business, where you form the business, as well as understanding what the end goal will help you to ensure that the steps you're taking and things that you're doing are all aligned and getting you to that end goal. Not to say that that end goal is going to be the end goal of the company forever. You could have a 5-year or a 3-year plan and then ultimately change direction. And the goal could be, we've grown wildly beyond our expectations, and now we're going to need to ingest outside capital to be able to get us to this new finish line that we think is out ahead of us, versus when we started, maybe we had a smaller idea and then that idea caught fire and now it's a much larger idea.
That was a lot of words.
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah, always. Always a lot of words.
That's a lot of words.
Sorry.
That was a very long run-on sentence.
I think it was an idea more than a sentence.
All right. So you always have the end game in mind. But we've done this a few times. We've done the whole startup thing, taking it to acquisition, running it for a while. We've had some where we've sold it or we've had some that we've just completely stopped doing in general. What's the biggest regret that you have in your career when it comes to business? And let's say there's failures. Every business, every person goes through some failure cycle or something that did not turn out the way you wanted it to.
Yeah. I don't think I would label any as regrets. I think learning lessons. Yeah, exactly. I like to take the line from John Dutton in Yellowstone that there's winning and there's learning. And sometimes you do a lot of learning. And I've definitely learned a lot in my years of running companies, as well as I'm sure you have in some of the other businesses that we've run together. So I think, the biggest one for me, and the advice I give most often to people, is equity is very scarce, right? And it's something that you have to hold on to with dear life. Like, that is the rocket fuel for your company. That's the thing that once you give it away, it is damn near impossible to get it back. And it's easy to fall into the pitfall early on when you're starting a company, because you're like, fuck, my company's not worth anything. So if I can give someone this equity that really doesn't have any value and they'll take a lower salary to come in, then I can, make payroll better and I don't have to expend as much of my, cash flow to be able to bring this person on board. Yay, this is a win, because I'm giving them nothing, just phantom thing called equity. And then, lo and behold, 5, 7, 10 years down the road, that equity that you gave away is a valuable commodity. And once you've given it to them, there's no
getting it
back. There's no clawback, right? So that person could become a total shithead and not work at all. And they still have a part of your equity and are sitting on the cap table. I mean, I'm not a lawyer, so there probably are ways in which you could get it back depending on how your operating agreement is structured. But, I think the rule of thumb would be that do not give it away. And if you do want to give it away and leverage it for, highly compensated people, that you make it with a lot of contingents and it's earned and it's vested over periods of time.
Yeah, I think people are very, very quick to give away equity in the beginning. They're like, oh, I just started a company. Look, I have all this equity. If you come on board, I'll give you 10%.
Right, because that 10%,
it's not worth anything.
Doesn't cost me anything
yet.
It doesn't cost me anything.
It costs me nothing right now. But 5 years down the line, you might have just shot yourself in the foot.
Yeah, and lessons learned there. I mean, there's equity, and you never know. Like, there could be someone 5 years down the road that you meet that is an incredible proponent for your business and someone that can help you take it to the next level. But if you've given away the vast majority of your equity, then there's no way to recalibrate without making sure that everybody in line wants to vote on dilution or the creating of more shares to be able to, still part of dilution, but to be able to give that to somebody else. Right. And if you have given it to someone and that person actively participating in the business anymore, they may not have any incentive to go along or go with the flow.
Yeah. So I think rule number one, and just think long and hard before you decide to give anybody anything, even at the beginning. I know that you feel like you're stretching, reaching this business. I'm going broke. Hold on to that equity for dear life because it could be worth millions.
Yeah. And I know people, if you start with partners, somehow you think that's easier because you've distributed the risk. But, I think understanding that there's way more paperwork between you and your business partners than you and your spouse.
Absolutely. Too many cooks in the kitchen. That's just another good talking point, because starting a business with 5 of your best friends seems like a great idea at the time, right? You get to work with people you like. You get to do everything. You get to do what you want with your friends. That's a great idea. Let's do it. Let's all 5 jump in. We're all going to get equal shares. It's going to be great. It's going to be awesome. And then it's not.
That sounds awesome. The first company that I founded, I did with friends. And I remember my lawyer at the time saying, do you need all of them? Does this business need all 5 of these people to be successful, or can it do it with 3 and employ the other 2 and things like that? And at the time, you're thinking, no, these are my buds, right? That we don't argue. There'll never be disagreements. And, I think that, having done it a couple times now, you realize that there will be arguments no matter what, no matter how, simpatico the 2 of you are, the 4 of you are, the 5 of you are, that there's going to be arguments. And there are a difference between being an equity holder, right, and being a leader in the company. And your equity does not always equate to the percentage of the strategy and leadership of the company that you have. And making sure that, you're able to tell people that, yeah, you may own X% of the company, but that doesn't mean every decision you get X% of the vote on, or you have X% of the, vision.
Yeah. And I think looking back on it, you always made sure that you had a majority of the voting rights.
Yeah, that's another, your operating agreement doesn't have to be
equal shares,
equal to the cap table, right? So you could have disproportionate voting shares. And I think in larger companies, let's say like Google or some of those, the CEOs and founders have super majority shares where, it's almost impossible to vote any way they don't want to vote. And you can set that up in your operating agreement so that you may have 50% of the equity or 30% of the equity, but you could have, 70% of the board votes.
So I think setting up a company, what's the best way to do it? I think most of our companies have been LLCs, but then we've also, I think you've done an S Corp, you've done a wholly owned subsidiary, you've dabbled in a lot of it.
Yeah. And I think it goes back to the beginning of the conversation of what's the end goal.
Yeah.
So if the end goal is to raise capital such that you can grow the company, then you need to be a C Corp. And understanding the delta between a C Corp and an LLC or an S Corp is if you're a C Corp, then you are paying tax on your accrued revenue and accrued profits versus your cash basis profits. So don't want to bore listeners with that conversation, but it has huge implications for the tax man. So the reason that a lot of the venture-backed or private equity-backed companies are C Corps is because, they're amortizing and depreciating a lot of goodwill and things they do during the creation of the asset that remedies that tax problem. But if you're a C Corp from the get-go and you haven't ingested capital and you're cash flow positive, even if you're not cash flow positive, but your P&L on an accrual basis looks like it, you're going to be paying tax on that. So, if you're looking to ingest capital, the C Corp is the way to go because of how you have to handle that company when they come in. And if you're going to run a family business and it's really just for you,
lifestyle business.
Yeah, lifestyle business with you and your family, then LLC is probably the best way. A single member or a multi-member LLC is probably the best way. And if you have multiple partners and you want to exit one day, it could be an LLC taxed as an S Corp and maybe even have a holding company that owns it. And there's tax folks that you should talk to, professionals. But
I was going to say, we are not professionals. This is purely from experience.
Yes. Run
everything that we're saying by somebody who does this for a living. We do not.
Yeah, every situation is different. So, and there's no cookie cutter way to do it. Outside of if you're a venture back, there's a cookie cutter way to do it. But understanding what's the right one for you, and then understanding what your end goal is. Like if your end goal is to have a family business, then run your LLC. But if your end goal is to I'm going to sell this thing one day, then you got to be careful not to run it like a family business. Right. So if you're running it like a family business with an LLC and you're passing through tons of expenses through the company and you're, not as tight on expenditures, when they look back through the books, it's going to impact your valuation.
Yeah. Let's say
you got to be
due diligence.
Yeah.
During due diligence, they comb through everything.
Yeah.
Everything.
Right. And when they're looking through to get an EBITDA calculation and
EBITDA is,
that's something I need to look up. Exactly. But it's earnings before interest, tax, depreciation, and amortization.
Yes. You didn't have to look it up.
I didn't have to look up, but I just wanted to make sure I was right.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah. But in a family run business, you don't have the level of scrutiny on the cost. And just to think that if your plan is to exit and, you're going to exit at what you think is, let's do easy math, 10 times EBITDA, right? So if you decide I'm going to lease my vehicles for the company, because it's a valid business expense. I use it for the company, and I'm going to lease a Porsche or a Maybach versus a Toyota, and the delta in car payment is $5,000 a month. So that's $60,000 a year at a 10 times EBITDA, right? That's what, 60. So that's $600,000 off the purchase price because of that expense you ran through. So you may say, well, maybe the Toyota is a better choice.
Yeah. And I'm not saying we've done this.
No, I'm just, there are things to consider that you don't think about early on. Cause when I started the first company, our goal was really to be a lifestyle business.
Yeah. It was never to sell.
No, we wanted to do something different. We wanted to build a company that we actually wanted to work for and we thought was cool. And it was a place we wanted to go to work every day and do something we thought was good. We thought we were better than anybody else at it. So we're like, hey, we're going to be cream of the crop. We'll be the best, cybersecurity company out here with really high end architects and engineers that really know what we're doing.
And you were.
Yeah. And we're like, hey, we're going to get to 10 to 12 people and we're just going to run like that. And it's going to be awesome. And then
10 to 12 turns
we
into...
hit 10 to 12 within the first, 8 months. Mm-hmm. And then it became, I wonder how big we can get. And then, 300 employees later. And then, we weren't even looking to exit at that point. We had some discussions with some investment bankers and didn't think we were going to get the number we wanted. So we decided, hey,
just keep running.
Yeah, let's just run. This is... it's what we want to do anyway. We're executing on the plan, the strategy that we put in place when we started the company. But, things changed. Someone came up to us and gave us an offer we couldn't refuse, because they say in The Godfather, and, lo and behold, away we went.
All right. So I think now is a good time to segue into our marriage and how we basically run it like a business with sex, obviously. But
that's my favorite part, by the way. No, I think we had this discussion before the pod, really talking about how we view marriage as this joint engagement in life. Like we're playing the game of life, but we're doing it together. And
but we are literally playing the game of life.
Yeah, and we each have roles to play just like a business. And as long as you and I know what the end game is, like, what are we trying to do? Or we're trying to be
death
for me, probably. But we're trying to be happy together. We're trying to raise, 5 amazing kids together and raise them the way we think is right at the time. And that moves from here to there. But our goal is to stay married and be happy and enjoy life together.
Yeah.
Right. So if both of you have that same mindset, then you're ready to go.
Yeah. I think we do treat our marriage like a business. You're the CEO. You have the grand scheme.
Yeah. I think we know our strengths and weaknesses. I think we talked about it on a previous pod. I'm good at ideas and not so great at execution.
And I'm great at execution, not so good at the financial.
Yeah, the CFO part. Yeah, so I'm CEO and CFO. You're more of the strategy officer, and then your mom helps out as like the operations officer. The military comes out in her and is regimented of, all right, I'm executing XYZ. I'm taking that hill.
Exactly. We all have our swim lanes.
Yes.
And I think we're very good at staying within them.
And that's much like a business. I think carving out what you're good at and letting things you're not good at go by the wayside.
Yeah, but I think the danger comes in when one of us gets tunnel vision on their current business.
Yeah, sometimes that happens.
And it could either be you, it could be me.
Yeah, and it's, back to, there's only so much air in the balloon. So certain times the business gets squeezed and takes all the air out of it, and, marriage and family life suffers. And it's up to the other partner to, bring it back to middle ground.
But I was actually talking to somebody yesterday about this. I had a call with a publishing group in Minnesota, and she was like, how do you work with your husband? And I'm like, well, technically we all work with our husbands, right? Like, even if you're running 2 separate businesses, you're still working together within the marriage. It's not you're running your side, he's running his side. It's very much a partnership, and you have to be supportive. You have to, I think we talk about anything or any project that we take on. And I value your opinion to an extent, and vice versa. I think you, or at least I hope you value.
I do.
My opinion.
Yeah. I think we have a great relationship there. There's no secret in my business life that I hold. It's not like I come home and be like, oh, I'm too tired. I don't want to talk about business. Let's just, give me 45 minutes to decompress, and then we'll talk about the kids.
No, if anything, I feel like it's the opposite.
Yeah.
It's definitely the opposite for anybody listening. If you work with my husband and you cause a problem, I will know about it.
Yes, I bring my work home with me.
Unless it's under contract that he can't tell me. But for the most part.
Yeah, and I think for me, relationship, there's a great poem that I learned many, many years ago. I can't quote it. I'm just, the author, I think, is Khalil Gibran or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's about, building houses, and marriage is like a house. And that, you have the two man and the woman are 2 pillars in the house. And if they're too close together, the roof is unstable. So you have to be unique individuals. But if you're too far apart, right, the roof just collapses in. So you got to find that happy medium. And I think we most of the time have it. Yeah.
I mean, last week we were not vibing. Something was off, but I went away for a volleyball tournament and then I came back and now we're fine.
Yeah. It happens.
It happens. But I think we do work together. There's no way around it. And you got to figure it out. You got to figure out what works with you or what works for your relationship.
Yeah. And I think keeping, I try, is, keeping that flirtation and sexual health going as well. You can't just be business partners. And I think that sometimes that's a trap a lot of people fall into, is you're in a business all the time and now you're just business partners. You're no longer.
Well, I mean, we have a weekly minimum.
Yes.
We have a weekly minimum.
I have a weekly minimum.
He has a weekly minimum and we hit that minimum. And that's the line in the sand. Anything more that's just the cherry on top, but the line in the sand is our weekly minimum. I'm not going to say what it is.
Yes. And I think, there's all kinds of sex. There's the amazing, really vibing. And then there's maintenance and, all that other good stuff. But as long as you make it a priority and it's not like, oh, ho hum, it's 5:30, let's go. It's more of, it's organic. It happens or doesn't happen. But
even though in my mind, it's
well, you time block everything,
including sex.
But it's, making sure that, it is a priority, because if not, it's easy to put it to the wayside for some people. And it becomes, it's something we forgot to do on Wednesday.
Yeah, we're not those people.
As such, we have 5 children.
So obviously there's no TV in the bedroom.
There is, though. We just never turn it on. Unless it's football season. That's it. It's the only time the TV ever comes on.
But segueing into those 5 children, something that you probably don't know about my husband is that he has been coaching baseball and Little League for the last, 5 years, since right before the pandemic.
It was during the pandemic.
Was it during the pandemic? Yeah. Okay, so for the last 4 years, he's coached spring ball and fall ball for our boys. Being a sports parent, it's opened up a whole world that I did not know existed, in the sense that there are some coaches that take this a little bit more seriously than we do. There's some parents that think their kids are going to the World Series at the age of 8. And we're not those parents. We don't ask our kids what they want to be when they grow up. We ask them, what do you enjoy?
Yeah.
What problem do you want to solve?
And I'd like to think, for me, I think team sports is an incredible educational foundation for children, that it teaches you that no matter how great you are, you can't do it alone. And what we just talked about, business or marriage or life in general, or as a species, you can't just exist on your own. You can be incredible on your own, but to really get joy, in my opinion, joy and validation in life, you need to do it with others. And I think team sports is a great way to learn that early on. And it also teaches you, some winning, but a lot of learning, because, you don't always win. And in team sports, it's very difficult to win all the time. And I was going to say we've, pushed all of our kids to make sure they played team sports, but I don't think we really pushed. I think it just became organic through conversation and how we are and how we interact, that most of our kids have gravitated to playing a team sport.
When you're a child and you're on this team, it doesn't matter who your parents are. It doesn't matter how much money you have. If you have the natural God-given talent, you are going to shine. You can't buy talent. You can't buy athleticism. You can't buy that drive. And I think that's a really important lesson for our children, that we could give you everything. We could give you all the lessons. We could give you.
There's a lot of private baseball lessons and private volleyball clinics and private this and private that and one-on-one coaches and practicing 6 days a week at 7 and 8 years old. And you're like, wow.
Yeah. But hate to break it to you, only 7% of children actually play
collegiate sports.
And that's across all divisions. That's across D1, D2, D3, NAIA.
Yeah, so it's a very small percentage. It's a small percentage that play high school athletics.
Yeah.
And then of that small percentage, it's an even smaller percentage that go on to play in college. And then, those that can earn a living at it, it is a fraction of 1%.
Yeah.
A very small fraction. So I think keeping it in perspective for you and for your children.
Yeah, your kid is not going to the World Series. They're probably not going to the Super Bowl. So at the end of the day, we just want to teach our children how to be good teammates, how to stay active, and how to lose properly. Because there are some kids that get up there and they strike out and they start crying and kicking shit, and like you're gonna strike out more than you're gonna hit a ball.
Yeah, and then you also have the parents that scream from the stands and are yelling at their kids, and I've fallen victim to it. And I think that probably it's what we're talking about before, like my oldest son, getting him lessons with an outside coach, because I think that he has heard everything I've had to say, and a lot of times I think I give him too much. So now he's especially when he's hitting, he's up at the plate, and I think he's thinking about 30 different things that I've said. And then looking at videos when he was playing rookie ball at like 5 and 6, his swing looks better at 6 than it does now. And, the only person that fucked that up is me.
Yeah. You just overcoach.
Yeah. And it was a great Instagram handle. I'll give the guy, it's at Coach Ball Game, I think is his handle. And he was on NBC recently, but he has great instructional videos on things to teach kids, but most of it, some of it, let's say half of it is aimed at teaching parents as well.
Yeah.
And he has a great little monologue about, you don't coach from the stands. Like when he's up to bat, it's a stressful situation to begin with. He doesn't need you yelling 45 clues, at him. Hey, get your hands back, elbow up, elbow down, drive through the ball, get your weight shifted back, shift forward, step into it, make good contact, line drives. And then you're like, the kid's like, what the fuck am I supposed to do? He knows all those things. You don't need to tell him again. And the only person he should probably listen to is the third base coach that's giving him positive reinforcement, which is hard as parents. And it's hard for me. I've gotten to the point where I talk to the other coaches and like, I'll tell them what I see in Maddox, but I'm not telling him.
Absolutely. Just look away. Yeah. Just look away. And when I've been at volleyball tournaments, basically for the last 5 weekends off and on, when my girls are up there, whether it's serving or doing anything, I can't watch. I just look away. I don't want to say anything negative. I don't want to see it. They're out there. They have a coach, which don't get me started on one of them's volleyball coach. I'm a little upset with him right now. But I can't watch. I try not to give negative feedback. And this is all things that I have learned with the oldest girl. I'm sorry, Ava. We've had some rough volleyball tournaments in the beginning, and I know better now.
Yes.
And Michaela is reaping the benefit of your experience. But yeah, it's hard as a parent to sit back and watch your child struggle and do things wrong. But I think it's so important. They have to learn how to fail, and they have to learn how to not be good at something. And the only way to get better is through perseverance and through actually trying.
Yeah. And I think the benefit that we got with Ava was really of, what's the end goal? What are we trying to achieve? And I think if you can understand that together, right, then it becomes that anchor point when things go wrong. So with Ava, it was really, our goal is for you to make your goal, her goal, our goal together was she wanted to play on her varsity volleyball team. And this was when she was a freshman. And we said, okay, that's great. That's the goal. Let's do everything we can to get to that goal. And then when she made a travel volleyball team that was a really competitive travel volleyball team, and she did not see a lot of court time and she did not vibe with the coach very well, but
he was an awful human being.
Yeah. And she would, be upset at tournaments or be upset after practices.
Lots of tears.
Yeah. And when I talked to her, it was like, hey, you don't have to play a minute this whole summer. It doesn't matter. What matters is you're getting the practice in. And when you warm up at the tournaments, do your warm up like it's your game. So all that matters right now for you is to get better so that you can make the varsity volleyball team, right? And then that summer she was on the JV team. And then it was a continuation of that same, mantra of, hey, everything we're doing every day, every rep is to get better to make the volleyball team, the high school volleyball team. It's not about getting recruited to college. It's not about, I don't know where
going
you play
to play
pro.
D1.
Yeah, where would you play pro volleyball? Over in Europe somewhere? But that's not the goal. The goal is to make the high school team. And then, when things aren't going your way or you see, your friends or other people getting better. And, part of that too for her was that, she hadn't been playing that long and that she's behind all these kids. Sure. But she's going to catch up fast. And some of them have kind of, plateaued.
Yeah. He peaked in high school.
Yeah, exactly. And then I think it's the same with with baseball or any other sport, basketball, whatever they're playing, is understand what your goal is. The goal is, high school is the goal to one day play in college and making sure you support them for that goal. But, if the goal is pros, that's great. But, you don't want to burst their bubble, but you also don't want to spend their entire youth and every waking moment and every hour of every day when they can be out and actually just be a kid playing at the playground and running around with their friends and riding bikes, taking reps on something that, like we said, the percentages aren't in their favor. And, as a parent, it's hard. You have the rose colored glasses on, but, there's a lot of great coaches out there, and coaches make extreme impacts on children's lives by being positive, and then also, let them coach. And if your child is truly extraordinarily gifted, Brian Mitchell, I think on the radio said, like, if your child is extremely gifted at football or baseball or basketball, I'm just saying boy sports, after puberty, like they are far and away bigger than everybody else. They're better than everybody. You'll know immediately. And if they're not, then hey, there's nothing wrong with that either. There's plenty of,
But your children will still have that foundation of being a positive impact on other people. And they'll still have that foundation of playing with others and learning how to lose properly and learning. It's an invaluable tool.
And developing skills for life. Like, that's, I think baseball is great. I maybe overhyping it, but basketball is similar. But.
Well, and I think for the oldest girl, the fact that she made it through that 16s year and didn't quit is a true testament to her. Mm-hmm. Because if it were me and I had to deal with it, that coach wasn't nice to her. He played favorites, and she called me crying more times than she called me happy. So I think that's a true testament that if she can make it through a situation like that, where she's highly unfavored, she's not treated well, and she came out on top and understood that in the next year, when she made that same team, she didn't go back.
Yeah.
She went somewhere where she was valued.
Mm-hmm. So and I think that's
a great life
transformed
lesson. She
during
did.
that season.
She really did.
She became who she is, and understanding how to pack for herself, take care of herself, get up on time. She still really can't get up on time.
She's getting better.
I know. I think your mom is going to call her every morning until she graduates college.
Probably.
Like, are you up at 6 a.m.?
My mom's adorable. She calls her every morning at like 6:30 to make sure she's up.
Yeah. Will that be able to continue?
Well, probably. And she makes her breakfast tacos. I mean, I didn't even get fucking breakfast tacos growing up. Like, what the hell?
Yeah. You'll make breakfast tacos for, Ava and Michaela's kids.
For Ava.
Not them, but for their kids, you probably will.
Absolutely. And going back to volleyball, the end game shifted again to where when she first started, she didn't want to play in college. And now the goal is 2 years, playing at least for the first 2 years in college and then seeing how you feel about it then. But I think we made that decision as a family because I think it's important for her to have that support system when she goes into a new transition. Transitioning from living at home with your parents to living on campus at some place you've never been, it's a big one. And I think she needs to have those people that are in her corner and making sure that her livelihood or her health and wellness are at their best interest.
Yeah. And I think, along the lines of Maddox's quote from the school project the other day, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take, which I thought was unprompted, was a fantastic quote for life for him. But it's the same situation with Ava in college now. Like, you have the opportunity. Recruiters are calling you. There is an opportunity, and maybe it works out, maybe it doesn't, but it's an opportunity and you should pursue it. And if it doesn't work out, hey, you took your shot. It didn't work out. And if you go and you play for a year or 2 years and it doesn't work out, you did your best and you tried. But if you don't do it and you don't try, 5 years from now, you can't unring the bell. Like, you can want it 5 years from now and wish you'd have done it, but you can't do anything about it. So it's better to have done it and failed than not done it at all.
Which, a little bit of a tangent, but I was listening to a podcast the other week, and Carter, I think his name is Carter Room, Paris Hilton's husband, his brother.
Why are you looking at me like I would know that? I barely know Paris Hilton. Like, Paris Hilton's third husband twice removed.
Stop it. I don't think she's ever been married, but Paris Hilton's husband's brother is going to play professional soccer over in Europe. And he's like 45. He's like
living his dream.
Yeah. That I guess the team was struggling financially and they needed an investment. And
sounds like Wrexham.
Exactly.
It's the same story, huh?
It was 100% like he pulled a Wrexham. I think he has his first, what are they called? Match?
Yeah.
He has his first match in May.
Oh, guess it's nice to be, in the Hilton atmosphere.
No.
Is he rich too?
Oh yeah. They made their. Can you imagine having Kathy Hilton as like your mother-in-law?
I don't know who Kathy Hilton is.
Paris Hilton's mother?
I get that. I couldn't pick her out of a lineup.
Oh my God. What is wrong with you?
I'm not into, reality shows.
Life?
I'm not into reality shows.
Whatever. Paris Hilton is a brilliant businesswoman. All right, folks. That's all for this episode. We are moving on.
Are we?
We are.
I'm not done.
You're done.
Not done.
The end.
No.
You've been listening to Married to the Startup. These two crazy people have spent over a decade juggling 5 kids and multiple startups and discussing everything from the boardroom to the bedroom. We hope you've enjoyed the show. If you did, make sure to like, rate, and review. We'll be back soon, but in the meantime, hook up with us on social media at Married to the Startup. And be sure to hit the website at www.marriedtothestartup.com. Take it easy, and we'll see you next time.